Okay, so I want to talk about parallel and perpendicular lines. We graph some lines, and sometimes it's important to know, compare it to another line, is it parallel or perpendicular? The easiest, of course, of those two is the parallel ones, because parallel lines just means they never intersect on an XY plane. And so, of course, they're both slanted the same way, and so parallel lines are going to have, how is their slope going to be related? Same slope, yeah. So parallel lines have the same slope. Well, let's draw a couple of perpendicular lines up here then. See what, we'll go slowly through the whole deal, but so perpendicular means they meet at right angles. Got a 90-degree angle between the two. And obviously there, those two do not have the same slope. But they are perpendicular because they are the way I set it up there. All right, so now if we look at the slopes of those, we talked about before, we talked about positive and negative slopes. We can certainly see this one going uphill, positive slope, right? This one's going downhill, so it has a negative slope. And I'll tell you what, let me, and so that's one thing we can note. Let me make another pair of perpendicular lines just to make it a little more obvious. All right, let me make this one here. And then one coming here, obviously again is going to be another set, because to make it a little more dramatic. Because here's what I wanted. I'm not going to prove it or anything, but we can clearly see there that if you look at this one compared to that one, again, it's negative slope here and positive slope here, so that's, again, verified. But, so that's one way perpendicular lines are related. They have opposite slopes. However, we can also tell there's something a little more going on, because if you'll notice here, this line is not so steep, is it? It's kind of gradual, and that's why I did this one. The same applies to that one, but it's harder to tell. But this is a little less steep, meaning it has a smaller number, right? Like a half, or maybe some other fraction between 0 and 1. However, this one's very steep, and so it's going to have a higher number. You know what I'm saying? Like a negative 2, 3, something like that. So this one's a smaller number, like, let's just go with a third. And this one is a negative, but it's kind of a higher number, meaning a larger value, absolute value, I guess you might say. But so it's not a negative a third, is it? Because it's got to be a higher number. Well, it turns out it's the reciprocal. If that one's 1/3, then this one's a minus 3/1. Yeah, perpendicular lines have slopes that are opposite reciprocals, the way I say it. Perpendicular lines have slopes that are opposite reciprocals. So they have opposite signs, and they're reciprocals, flip over from one another. Okay? All right. So, with that in mind, so parallel lines have the same slope. Perpendicular lines have opposite and reciprocal slopes. Okay. All right, so what would slope, what would the slope of the line be number one, that is perpendicular to y equals minus 3x plus 4. So what would be the slope of the line? What would the slope of the line be that is perpendicular to y equals negative 3x plus 4? Well, we first of all need to make sure we've got the slope of this line. What's the slope of this line?
Negative 3.
Yeah, so that's our slope of this line.
So the other one would be positive 1/3.
So the other one's going to be the opposite reciprocal, right? So the slope of the line perpendicular to that would be m equals, yeah, we've got a negative, so it'd be a positive. You don't have to write a positive, but just for emphasis there. And yeah, just like before, oh, I should have changed it up because I had it right over there, didn't I? Yeah, it's 1/3. Positive 1/3. All right, number two. What would be the slope of the line? What would the slope of the line be that is parallel to, and this one's going to be 4x plus 5y equals 9. All right, so that's easy enough. Parallel, we know we just have the same slope. However, can we say here the slope of this one, the slope was, what was times the x up here? Is it slope 4 here? Nope. The slope of this one is not 4 because why? It's not in y equals mx plus b form. Okay? So to figure out the slope of this one, and thus the parallel one too, yeah, we've got to put this one in y equals mx plus b form. One way to do that. Which just means, yeah, we've got to get the y, solve for the y by itself, put the y on the side by itself. So how we do that? Well, I'm going to subtract 4x from both sides. So that'd make it 5y equals negative 4x plus 9. Then divide by the 5 to get the y by itself. So y equals, and then, like I said, both of those divide by 5. And so the slope of the line that we're given is negative 4/5. So what would be the slope of the line parallel? Well, of course,
Negative 4/5.
negative 4/5, yeah. Same exact slope. Okay? All right. Now, another way they might ask you about this is just compare two lines, and it's very similar, but so are the lines parallel and perpendicular here? So we'll do y equals 2x plus 1 and y equals negative 2x minus 7. Are those lines parallel? No, obviously not, because one has a slope of 2 and then the other one has a slope of negative 2. Are they perpendicular though?
No.
Why not?
Because of the
It's
negative
not.
7.
No, because
Yeah.
it's not.
Because
It's not it's opposite, but not the reciprocal, right? It's got to be both. Yeah, they're opposites, but as far as the number part there goes, yeah, we've got 2 and negative 2, so one, they're not reciprocal, so they're neither perpendicular or nor are they parallel. Okay, all right, so one other question then also that they will ask us to do is find some parallel and perpendicular lines. And so let's do that as well. So let's find the equation of the line perpendicular to 3x minus 2y equals 7 that goes through 3 negative 8. So essentially, same as we were doing before, just adding an extra step and actually find the equation of the line perpendicular. You know, could be parallel, but chose to do perpendicular here. Yeah, it's the same deal, right? I need, first of all, I need to establish, well, this is my original line. What's the slope of that line? Because that'll determine, right, the slope of the perpendicular line. And so just like before, to get the slope of this line, I can't read it right off of there. You do a little work. Let me go ahead and solve this for y, get it in y equals mx plus b form, just like we did before. So subtract the 3x, so minus 2y equals negative 3x plus 7, and then divide by negative 2. And so that would be y equals, divide those by negative 2, so you got positive 3 halves x minus 7 halves, but really all I'm interested in there is the 3 halves, isn't it? That's my slope of this line. I want, though, a slope that's perpendicular. And so that would mean this new line here is going to have, since this is 3 halves, it's going to be negative 2/3, yeah, reciprocal. Easy enough. All right, well, that's the slope of the line. I want the equation of that line, though. So now it just becomes a similar problem we've done before. We've got the slope, we've got a point. I say let's just go ahead and look at y equals mx plus b. I've got the m, negative 2/3, and so we can just plug in and find the b. Plug in that for x and y, and you got your b, right? Oh, this will work out nice. So negative 8 equals negative 2/3. The x is 3, so what's b? Negative 6. So there's no perpendicular line. Y equals negative 2/3 x minus a 6. Is that okay? Believe that?
I feel like I might have been doing it a little bit different, but still getting a result. So